1930 Type 49 Bugatti. I've had it for 28 years now. It came into this country from behind the Iron Curtain in pieces in a rather naughty way. This was a long time ago. I rebuilt it over a period of time and I've used it regularly, mainly as a road car. Absolutely delightful, flexible, comfortable, practical vehicle. Well, this car, as I said a few moments ago, came from probably 30 or 40 years behind the Iron Curtain. It was in Hungary. It came out in pieces. It arrived at our home. We were then living in Yorkshire with the chassis on top of an ancient Mercedes estate car. It had no body, but all the mechanical components were there. And having got it sorted out from a mechanical going concern point of view, I then had to decide what sort of body to put on it, because I hadn't got anything, not even a bonnet, not even a picture of what it would have looked like originally. So together with a friend of mine who is a brilliant, talented craftsman, he's built several bodies on different cars that I've had. We designed between us something which is, I think, a very nice combination of a two-seater body, but with a rumble seat or a dicky seat or whatever you want to call it, that is known fondly as a mother-in-law seat. The reason it's known as a mother-in-law seat is that you put your mother-in-law in it and she's got no screen, she's got no way of escaping, she can't hear a word that you're saying, you can't hear a word that she's saying, and it's wonderful. But that's a rather mischievous story. The car has got a very nice history of being used regularly, looked after as a car that you can get in at any time and just use it. I've got a number of cars and my main criteria is that they are genuine, not replicas, that you can get in any of them and drive a couple of 100 miles literally without blinking. And if it's a bit of fun, you can also race them.
So I bought this car in 2013 from Charles Dean, who had owned it with his father previously since about 1974, 75. Prior to that, we're not quite sure. Well, we know where the chassis was purchased from, but there is some doubt as to the precise location of that chassis in the previous 20 years. What we now think is fairly certain is that this car was, or the frame of this car was originally, we know the date, we know obviously there's a frame stamp on there which gives us a date of early to mid 28, and with David Sewell, our Bugatti historian, he sort of identified that this is 4880 originally, and then was re-stamped as 4963 in 1930. It was at the factory. This frame was adjacent numbered to other Bugattis that were kept by the factory and raced in period in the late 20s. So we're almost certain this frame was in the factory, and we got some unusual drillings on the rear crossmember which indicate that there were certain things going on, perhaps adaptations being tried at the factory. Anyway, the car then was eventually re-stamped and sold in 1932 in the French Paris showrooms, before being imported to the UK before the war, Second World War. It then went through various owners after the Second World War, including Mike Oliver, who owned it from 1946 to 48, and he raced it here in Prescott. It was then coloured red, and it was a 35B, so 2.3 litre single cam supercharged car. A very proficient driver, very good engineer. He helped set up Connaught Cars, which is was the Formula 2 operation in the early 50s. Anyway, and then it went through various owners after him. We know in 1951 it was being raced in Essex at Gaydon, in Essex. but after that we don't quite know what the history of the frame, where it went to from there. There are some who believe that it went up to Scotland and became it was attached to an identity to 51126, which is a very famous Type 51. Our thoughts are today that it has no association with that car really at all. Nevertheless, the car has got a Type 51 engine in it, all good, all original.
The car was a pile of bits which I found back in 2003, and gradually I found a few other bits, and we put it together about 10 years ago, purely as a race car, so it's only ever raced. Originally it was a 35A, so it was a much less powerful car. It was a plain bearing car, and we've upgraded it and turned it into a 35B, which is a supercharged car. It runs on methanol, so it's not really very tractile on the road, but it's a great car on track. Most of the time I do circuit racing with it, although I have done hill climbing here a few times now. Not as fast as Ed next to me in the 51, but it's good fun. It's very quick. It's a very forgiving car though, so it's got very, very big brakes. Although there's a lot of power, it handles very smoothly, it's very neutral. It just drifts lightly. It's a very easy car to drive. There's a lot of cars you drive and they kind of bite you. The Bugatti GP cars don't. They're kind of very, very forgiving. They're quite straightforward to maintain. You need a sort of gearbox rebuild every winter. You'll pull the engine apart every year and have a look at everything and just replace things that wear and break. Normal consumables. We were here on Thursday, we broke the gearbox, so we had a new gearbox in yesterday, which isn't ideal. So I'm kind of running in the gears today. But no, it's quite a simple car to maintain and keep going. The only thing is original parts, you know, they're unobtainable. So there's an industry in fixing original bits, and you fix and you find ways of fixing things. Technology for welding aluminium, bits and pieces like that. Specialists who run magneto refurbishments. There's a chap in Italy I use for that, and it's looked after by Gentry Restorations, who are in Buckinghamshire in Worming Hall, and they do a very good job of running it and preparing it for me.
I'm quite fortunate because my dad was very keen on Bugattis, so me and my family, we share 4 of them. So we have a Type 51 that was a works car, and then the factory turned it into a 51A, and it was sold to Lindsay Eccles, and we owned that since 1978, I think. And then we have a 55, which is a lovely coupe car, and we've had since I think 1978. And then we have a 57, which me and my brothers used to be taken around in when we were little children. We used to be brought to Prescott. Sorry, I'm steaming up a bit. And then a 59 that my dad got a pile of bits and built it up in about the 90s. So yeah, rather fortunate to have the use of all those cars, and have been coming to Prescott since I was a small boy, and yeah, love it here even on a rainy day. So the 59 and the 51, which are Grand Prix cars, so yeah, compete here with them, and the 51 sort of works best here really. The 59 is quite big and very powerful, but the 51 is very nimble, and therefore it's lovely up Prescott. The cars live at home, and yeah, no, it is quite a lot of work to keep them all running, and then we get some help from Tudor Engineering when serious problems occur. But yeah, it's just keeping them in a nice and warm and looked after. Fabulous to drive. We've driven all over Europe and, well, even America with them. So we use them on the road a lot and race them and hill climb them. And they're just, yeah, they are a work of art. So a beautiful thing to enjoy and drive. Well, the Type 59, it raced in the Vanderbilt Cup in 1936, but sadly it crashed in practice and therefore didn't make it for the race. And the 51, the 51 has so many interesting stories about it. I suppose one of the most interesting was the Targa Floria in 1932, when it was driven by Varzi and I'm trying to think who else. Maybe it was either Varzi and Chiron, and one of them started in 2 cars, then one guy broke and then they swapped cars. So it was driven by both these amazing drivers in the Targa Floria. So it has, that was the highlight of its history, I think.
I've always loved cars, vintage cars. And a chap that came into our yard one day, we were farmers, and we always buy grass seed from him, around about 200 to 300 acres a year. And he came in and he saw a Model A Ford, which was mine. And he said, "Well, that's nice." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "We've got a chap up north, and he has got some old vintage cars in a barn." And I said to him, I said, "Before I do this deal, you go and find out what kind of cars they are." And he said, "Oh, I wouldn't know." I said, "Well, find his address and have a word with him, see if I can go up there and have a look." And after 2 weeks, he phoned me up and he said, he's up in Lake Windermere. He gave me the address, Lower Gracewhite Hall, Lake Windermere. And he's got a barn full of cars, and his sister's passed away, and he wants to get rid of them. And I said, "What's up there?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I've had a look and there's several cars. There's one with a horseshoe radiator." I said, "Oh, I'd be interested in that." So off I went the following day up to Lake Windermere and saw this chap down a drive, and I said, "I've come to look at an old car you've got here, or several old cars in a barn." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I've got them in the barn." So I went in the barn, he opened the barn up, and I went in and I said, "Oh, that's the car I want." Is that Bugatti? "Oh," he said, "that bloody thing." He said, "I'll be glad to get rid of it." Anyway, we had a deal. I bought the car and it had wire wheels on, which was completely wrong. And I got it home, and I've had the car actually 43 years. We completely stripped it and took the engine out, everything out, right back to the bare chassis, and shot blasted it all and got the actual car back on the road. And it took us about 10 years to get it back on the road. New wheels on it. The gearbox inside was no good, so we had to put new pistons, everything, new crankshaft, and I made it from a 35 to a 35B, a blown Bugatti with a supercharger on. And I enjoy driving it, it's lovely. And I've had it 43 years, the car. And Murray Walker's been around Goodwood in it, and Sterling Moss raced the car at Chelsea Walsh Hill Climb. And I still got it and I really love it. We're always doing work on it. Last month we had the back axle out and put a new half shaft in it. It's stripped, and the gearbox as well. I stripped the gear and the gears. That had to be done, and we put a new clutch in it as well. And the engine's been rebuilt twice since I've had it. New pistons and all the rest of it in it. It runs on Castrol R, so it's very good.